Hello students, I'm Madam Joyce from Educare TZ. I'm teaching biology and today I'll be with you to discuss our topic which is found in Form 5. And this one it is the fourth topic which is found in Form 5. And this topic it is called the coordination and irritability. This topic it is very simplest topic in Form 5. So my student, in this topic now we are going to look on our subtopic which is the sensory receptor. We are going to look on the sensory receptor. Also, this sensory receptor, you are familiar with it because you have already covered it in your O level. That is from Form 3. You have already covered about this sensory receptors. But here, my student, it is just like continuation of where you end there in O level. So we're going deeper to discuss this content of sensory receptor. So my student, before we are proceeding further, we have to recall ourselves on where we end on the last session. Whereby on the last session we tried to look on the nervous coordination in mammal, and we were finished that subtopic, and we tried to look a little bit introduction on the sensory receptor, looking the meaning of what is the receptor, what is transduction, what are the transducer. And now, my students, I would like to welcome you again in this session, is whereby now we are going to begin looking on the types of the sensory receptor. We are looking on the types of the sensory receptor. Since these types of sensory receptor, we have said that it has been classified into several classifications. So we try to look also on the last session the first class of this classification. That is, we are saying that the receptor can be classified into different groups based on their structure, type, and the location of the stimulus they detect. So hizi receptors ambazo zinapatikana within an animal or within an organism, tunasema kwamba zimebe classified according to where are they located. For example, here we have said that according to the structure, zinafanya kazi tofauti. Pia according to the type and the location of the stimuli they detect. We're going more further to discuss this, but now you have to know a little bit introduction of these types of the sensory receptor. As I have said in the last session, also we classify the sensory receptor based on the structure. And here in this classification of the receptor based on the structure, we have already covered on the first classification, that is the single sensory neuron receptor. Single sensory neuron receptor. Hiyo ndio the first kind of classification of sensory receptor based on the structure. Na pale tulisema kwamba ndani ya hii single sensory neuron receptor, these are receptors which are called the primitive receptors. They are specialized to detect the stimulus from their surrounding, and thereafter to send those impulses to the central nervous system that include the brain together with the spinal cord. So my student, you are warm welcome in this session. Now we are going to see the classification of this sensory receptor, based on the structure, but here we're going to discuss on the complex receptor, that is the sense organ. So here we are going to see the sense organ, that is complex receptors. So now we are saying that on the complex receptor, remember the other name of this complex receptor are the sense organ. I hope you know what kind of sense organ we are talking about. Here we are talking about the eyes, we are talking about skin, we are talking about the tongue, we are talking about ears. All of those, they are sense organ that are found within any organism. So now, in the complex receptors here, we are saying that these sense cells consist of modified epithelial cells. So ndani ya hizi receptor tunasema kwamba kunakuwa na hizi epithelial cells. Hizi epithelial cells, its role is to detect the stimuli. What kind of stimuli? Here in the last session or in the previous session, we are discussing about the stimuli. Stimulus, we can say that these are external change of the environment, or it can be either internal or external, but that is changes that are occurring within the environment. Hizo ndizo tunaita stimuli. So hapa tunasema kwamba hizo stimuli ndani ya hizo receptor are detected by the epithelial cells. that are found within the detector or within the receptor. So now we are saying that the sensory cell ambayo tunaita sensory neuron and other associated or accessory structure are example of complex receptors. So tukichukua zile sensory cell au sensory neuron au tukiongelea ile sense organ in general kwa ujumla, ndipo ambapo tutaongelea hii structure ambayo tunaita complex receptor. So this complex receptor also we can say that the cones, the rods, the lens, and the iris in the eye are examples of their sensory cells. So within the sense organ is where now many kind of sense cells are located. For example, we have sense organ ambayo tunaita eye. Kwa ndani ya eye there is a lot of content that is specialized for, that help the eyes to function properly. So a good example here, we have seen that we have the cones, we have the rods, we have the lens, we have the iris. All of this structure, they are found within the eyes. And the eyes is one of the complex receptor. So now my student, thereby you have to know that in each kind of classification, at least one example. Kwa mfano pale kwenye ile ya kwanza kabisa, classification of sensory organ or sensory receptor based on the structure, we have seen that we have single sensory receptor. Mfano wake tuliona ni mechanoreceptor. Tukasema mechanoreceptor inapatikana only within the skin. But within this complex sensory receptor, now we have seen that the complex sensory receptor consists of all sense organs that are found within the organism. And thereby we finalize by looking at an example. We have seen that a good example, we have eyes. So within the eyes, it comprises a lot of sensory cells that help this eye to perform its functioning properly. So kwenye kila kind of structure or kind of sensory organ or sensory receptor, you have to know one example for each. So it can help you while you are studying. So my student, after we have seen that the first classification of these types of sensory receptor, now I'd like to take you through another thing, that is classification of sensory receptor based on the stimuli, based on the type of stimuli. Kwa sasa tuna hii pia classification ya sensory receptor, lakini hii itakuwa ina base only kwenye type of the stimuli. As we have already seen that stimuli is any changes that is occurring within the environment. It can be either internal environment or external environment. So what kind of these sensory receptor are based on the stimuli or the type of the stimuli? Here we are saying that based on the type of the stimulus they detect, based on the type of the stimulus they detect in the environment, there are several types of the sensory receptors. Kwa kutokana na any changes that are occurring within the environment, ndipo ambapo tunapata receptor mbalimbali ambazo zina detect any changes that is occurring within the environment and send them into the brain so that it can be interpreted to provide appropriate response. So what kind of those receptors that are helping in detecting any changes that is occurring within the environment? So here, my student, we have the first one, which is mechanoreceptor. So mechanoreceptor is the one of the sensory organ that is helped to detect any changes that are occurring within the environment. We're going more further to see how this mechanoreceptor helps to detect any changes that are occurring within the environment. But here you have to know that we have mechanoreceptor, we have photoreceptor, we have thermoreceptor, we have nociceptors, and also we have chemoreceptors. We have osmoreceptor. Lastly, we're going to finalize by looking on electroreceptor. So hizo zote ni kind of the receptors ambazo zina function based on the stimulus. Stimulus tumesema ni changes that are occurring within the environment. A good example of this is stimulus including touching, including writing, including sound. All of those, they are stimulus. But now, my student, I have to finalize by saying that in each kind of classification of sensory receptor, you have to know to explain properly by providing the examples. So my student, in the second part of this session is where now we are going to clarify these kinds of sensory receptor based on the type C of stimuli. So thank you for listening.